Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Discussing a Murderer. This is Jeff Jones, and with me is the full panel. Starting off at the top, we'll say hello to Big Jeff. Hello, Big Jeff. Welcome back.
Hey Jeff, it's good to be here with everybody and everybody in chat. It's hard to believe it's been a whole week. That one just zipped right by. Looking forward to digging into this one and getting busy. So with that, let's go on to Jack.
Let's get to it. That's right. Right on to the other J in his name, Jack. Nice to see you, buddy.
Hey, hello to my panel members and everyone in the live chat. Yep, another week has gone by, and we're on to this next portion of Making a Murder 2, so let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Kellie, let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Hello, panel. Hello, everyone in chat. Good morning.
Thank you, Kellie. Good morning to you, too. And last but not least, Dr. Silkman, welcome and good morning.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's great to be back, and I'd like to welcome all my fellow panel members and everyone in chat. Really looking forward to this episode. Thank you very much.
I inherited this defense theory that Stephen Avery's blood in the RAV had come from the 1996 blood vial. So I started focusing on the viability of that theory and if I wanted to continue with it.
We added one more experiment.
At trial, the defense got totally sandbagged on it because the state tested for EDTA and refuted the arguments that the defense had made to the jury.
It's my opinion that the blood stains that were collected from the RAV4 could not have come from the EDTA tube that was provided to us in this case.
So we did an extensive investigation on EDTA and determined, talking to some of the leading experts in the country, that there was no point in retesting. I also explored a method of determining the age of the blood to detect whether it was 05 blood from Stephen Avery or whether it was from the 1996 blood vial. But Dr. Reich explained to me, you're talking about blood that degrades and is in a car from a 2005 murder. So he was cautioning me that it would be unlikely that there would be enough blood or any test that could date this blood. So I began to explore.
I'd just like to point out here that there was a research team that was able to age the blood, or actually age the DNA, and that was from a cutting. And Kellie can talk a little bit more about it if she likes. It was from a seat cutting. So Kathleen Zona was correct. One of the initial problems that they had with the DNA methylation analysis was that they could not get enough DNA. However, a research group was able to extract enough genomic DNA from the passenger seat cover. Right now, this is very interesting because this research team conclusively proved that the DNA methylation age of that DNA on the fabric piece was more closer to when Stephen's age in 2005. So it effectively eliminated the 1996 blood vial. Also, and just as importantly, that research team was able to obtain a genomic DNA profile from the seat cutting DNA, and it came back as Stephen Avery's. This is very interesting because, as Kellie will point out, this now narrows down a lot where that blood could have come from. Now, we've already discussed this. Cherie Cohen could have definitely swapped swabs. She could have obtained swabs from Stevens Pontiac Grand Dam and substituted those. However, it's going to be a lot harder to try and fake the blood on the seat. Not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder to do. Thank you.
Number one, Dr. LeBeau reminds me of a car salesman, a used car salesman that you go to if you have to. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion of him. I don't like the guy. Number two, and I found this out later on, didn't know this certainly when I was watching Making a Murderer. Found this out a few years ago, that these FBI agents that testify in court, they have handlers that watch them. They come to court, to trial, and watch what they say. Did you guys know that? That's a fact. Check it out. So when they're testifying, you have to wonder, are they influenced at all? I'm not saying they are. This is just an observation that is real, a real thing for these agents that have to, that are called to testify, and what they may or may not say during the course of a trial. And I'm not saying they'd lie. I'm just, how does that influence what they say, what they may not say? Anyway, yeah, there are issues with the blood inside the RAV, but as Dr. Silkman and we pointed out many times, not impossible to have pulled off, for them to have pulled off. And they showed a picture again of that CD case, and there's blood all over the damn thing. That's all I got.
So the question I have, Kellie's revving up for her question, is this new methylation test that was recently done seems to stand in contrast to what Kathleen Zellner is saying right now. Do you think that this is just an advancement in technology, or Kathleen was dealing with the wrong lab, or can you shed any light as to why Kathleen didn't think that this test was possible at the time?
Yeah, when you're doing a biochemical assay, no matter what test you do, there's a minimum amount of material that you need to do a testing. So quite clearly what's happened over the intervening years is that the procedure of DNA methylation has improved, the sensitivity of it has improved, and there's new methods which are much more sensitive. And I read the paper and I did a presentation on this. It's on YouTube actually. And essentially they had several samples of DNA from the RAV, from swabs, and also from the cutting. They were able to do an extraction of the DNA from the swabs and also from the cutting. The cutting just happened to have enough DNA in order to do an assay. And that means they were able to run it through their DNA methylation program. Clearly, back then, when Kathleen Zellner was trying to do the DNA methylation analysis, there wasn't enough DNA to do the test. However, since then, like I said, the sensitivity has improved, and this group did the work. They did the DNA methylation analysis, and they published the results. So they were able to work out the DNA methylation of the DNA that was present on the seat cutting. It definitely was not from the 1996 blood vial. And in essence, it really backs up Dr. LeBeau's finding that the samples that they tested had no EDTA.
Just going back to what Big Jeff said, in 2017, in one of her, I believe it was her PCR motion, there's a footnote, and she states that the testing couldn't have been done for the methylation test because there wasn't enough to test in terms of quantity. There wasn't just enough. And that was the end of it. And then like in 2019, I believe, out of the blue, she starts talking about that it had finally been done. And then we see like this report that has been released that some of us have got. And that kind of goes back to what Silkman was just talking about. The methylation testing was performed with the extraction from the swabs combined with the flakes and the seat cuttings. in the report that is available, it kind of interprets that it was more so that the flakes is what helped most of it in terms of the quality and the quantity, but it was the combination of all of it that she was given that they were able to then combine it and extract it and then run it through this testing and got back the aging. So yeah, just to kind of summarize that, it was due to the swabbing, the seat cuttings, and the flakes that kind of all combined it. I know a lot of the guilters kind of get a little bit pissy about this because they always say she made a footnote saying that couldn't be done, and then all of a sudden she comes out with that the testing had been done, blah, blah, blah. But I think it goes back to what you said just a minute ago, Big Jeff. I think it was the new advances of technology within the year or two that they were able to then extract more and utilize it a little bit more. And that's how they ended up getting the results. Ultimately, the guilters also think that she kind of prolonged it for a while because the results ended up being not so favorable. We saw in one of the last episode or two that she does say, they ask her directly, one of the reporters, what's going to happen if this comes back as fresh blood? And she's like, well, we're going to have a problem, aren't we? And I think that's why it's not that she withheld due to malice or anything like that. I think it's just that she just realized that it's not something that she wanted to just expose immediately until she worked out like where else it could have come from. And that's why she's essentially left with only one other possible scenario, and that is the blood in the sink at this stage.
Correct. And just on that, advancements do happen all the time, and techniques become more sensitive. And just in case there are any nerds out there who want to know about DNA levels, that research group had extracted DNA from swabs A6 and A8, and they only got 4.2 and 6.6 nanograms of DNA. That's an incredibly small amount of DNA, and that clearly wasn't enough for their detection system. From A9, which is the cutting, the research team was able to extract 48.4 nanograms. So you can see it's almost a 10-fold increase in the amount of DNA that they were able to extract from the cutting. And that was used for their DNA methylation analysis. So clearly, what Kathleen said originally was correct. There wasn't enough template DNA to do the DNA methylation analysis. However, with A9, they were able to extract much more DNA, and their procedure was very successful, which just goes to highlight, guys, the importance of the state keeping the bones, because with new advancements, even though they weren't able to extract genomic DNA from the bones back then, I'm very confident that now they would have been able to. It's an opportunity lost, unfortunately.
I mean, it's kind of predictable, though, isn't it, Dr. Silkman, to say DNA technology will probably get better? Like, if you're standing in 2005 going, yeah, we can't get anything today, but the way things are going, the trajectory, we might be able to in the future.
The techniques that are available today, I haven't really kept up to them, but they are mind-blowing. It's all done by robotics, very powerful new machines. And there's some very, very clever cookies out there that come up with all these novel, new, sensitive techniques that involve advanced engineering. And the bottom line is this: you now require much less template DNA in order to either amplify it up or do assays like DNA methylation. Now, DNA methylation is a specialized process. Not every laboratory in the world can do DNA methylation. It's a specialized technique. So there are kits that you can buy, but you need machinery and a lot of computer analysis to interpret and understand the results. But however, now the technique is sensitive enough in order to do DNA methylation analysis. And I'll tell you what, DNA methylation analysis is very, very accurate. So people can either use urine or blood in order to extract DNA and do DNA methylation analysis. It's a very, very powerful technique.
I mean, to me, the obvious question that comes up, I mean, it's a little bit off topic from where we are right here, but is there any hope at all for A23 that could actually be
Oh, no
processed?
question. But I dare say, and I'm sure Kellie will back me up, A23 has probably been placed in the trash can back in 2005. It's gone. There's no way the state would want to keep A23, because A23 potentially is new evidence, forensic evidence. And if I was Brendan Dassey, I would demand A23 to be tested. See if it still exists, or get access to the RAV and see if you can reprocess the RAV. Correct.
I was more thinking the RAV than the sample itself, but yeah, I guess there's potentially slim hope, but it will require a crisis of conscience from somebody in.
Correct. But it goes to show, guys, and we've talked about it, how badly forensically the RAV4 was processed. I really believe that they stopped once they got what they wanted, and that is the victim's DNA and the suspect's DNA, and that's it. They stopped. They really weren't that interested so much in the fingerprints, and they certainly didn't pursue A23 and also the DNA that's on the flash card. And of course, Jack 61, the blunt and bloody object. I don't know where that is. So you can see, yeah, it's pretty sloppy.
I have to agree. I think if A23 was around back then, it would be definitely gone now. Under the understanding that if this is any kind of foreshadow of previous shenanigans, A23, if it is a third-party source DNA, it's another Gregory Allen situation, and they've learnt very quickly not to keep that shit around. They kept around a DNA pubic hair that eventually freed Stephen. They're not going to keep around another source of evidence that could theoretically be retested in future testing and have the whole thing undone. When it came back that it was partial, I think that partial then went into the bin, and that way you'd never know any more than what Sherry had to testify to, and that was, it wasn't Stephen, and that's all we got.
Correct. And Jack will back me up on this. Imagine if Cherie Culhane had thrown out the slides that she had prepared of the pubic hair back in 1985. If she had thrown those slides out, that would have been it. Stephen would have still been in prison, right? So it goes to show the importance of keeping forensic evidence. And I'll tell you right now, when Cherie Culhane got back results that it wasn't Stephen who bled on the back door of the RAV, they would have gone straight in the bin. But even if we had a partial profile, imagine if you ran it through a database or did potentially familial analysis. Sure, you might get a lot of hits, but potentially you could narrow down your search. And wouldn't that be interesting? But again, I reckon A23 is long gone.
Especially now with the advancements of DNA. And, we're seeing, this other case unfold in front of us, this Idaho case, where it is alleged at this point of time that there could have been a DNA match through some kind of form of like ancestor. What's that DNA thing that they're doing now? It's like becoming like their secondary testing instead
23andMe.
Pardon?
23andMe.
I think so. Yeah, it's like a secondary. They don't. CODIS is your primary
genealogy websites that collect the genomic DNA that we're talking about, and they can compare and find familial
Correct.
DNA.
That's exactly how I believe it was the Golden State Killer. who was an ex-police officer who had murdered all on the western side of the US, in California and other places. He had murdered all these people, and they were able to trace him down. They were able to narrow him down through the use of familial DNA. And when he had committed all these crimes back in the 60s, I think it was, or 70s, he had actually left his DNA. But back then, they never had any DNA testing. So they had the DNA profile of the individual who had committed the crime, but they didn't have his DNA. However, they were able to put the crime scene DNA into databases, and they're able to narrow it down to a specific family. And it came down to 1 or 2 males that potentially could have been it, because I think he had a daughter and like 50% matching DNA. Hello. So they were to narrow it down. And I believe that they were able to subpoena or get access to his DNA, and it was a perfect match. That goes to show someone who's committed these crimes 40 years ago can still be nabbed today.
Exactly, and that was where I was going with this. A23 now could be very interesting in the terms of the advancement of technology and what is now available to narrowing down people. And yeah, I think that again, just it's gone. It has to be gone.
It doesn't mean Stephen didn't kill her, right? Even if it's Ed Edwards' DNA on there, right? It doesn't mean that Stephen didn't kill her.
Point. That is a great point.
Well, I'll tell you what it'll be, and Jack 61 will back me up on this. It'll be the unindicted co-ejaculator, right? So they'll just sit. No, the defense attorneys use that defense all the time. So they'll say, okay, you had help. Someone else helped you. So if we find that person, we'll arrest them as well. So in other words, they're not content to say, hey, Stephen is actually innocent. He was set up. They'll say, no. You had a co-conspirator, right? Oh, it wasn't Brendan Dassey. It was another third party. No problems. We'll arrest them too.
But they already did say that. They actually say it. They say it in their reply. They said, okay, maybe Bobby did push it because Stephen coerced him to push him to do it, like that he made Brendan help him do it. They were already inserting that Stephen could have got another third party to help. They already have covered this. This was in their reply.
And that might explain why they were so hard on Jody, because she could have been a co-conspirator as well, even though she was in prison. So they were kneeling on her really hard to see if she would spill the beans on Stephen.
Or other places the blood could have come from.
They say they found blood evidence in the car. Why do you think the DNA evidence is inaccurate?
Because somebody had to put it there. I know I had a cut on my finger. I know the blood was in my house from that, and I didn't clean it up, and it was cleaned up. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out, how it all happened. It was puzzling.
He says an old cut reopened and bled on his sink.
The only thing I can think of is when I cut my hand, when it broke open again. And in the bathroom, there was blood on the zinc. I woke up the next morning, it was all cleaned up. So right now, I'm still trying to think, who cleaned it up? Who was in my house?
For years, all the way back to 2005, he's talked about the fact the blood was taken from his trailer on the night of the 3rd, that he was bleeding, and that he bled in the sink and on the floor.
Your blood was found in several different places in the car. How do you explain that?
They put it there from my bathroom sink. I cut my finger. It broke open, and I had blood in the bathroom. That was Thursday night, and when we left, me and Chucky went to Menards. That's when I seen taillight back by me.
How far away were you from the tail light?
We're by the end of the road, but we were turning. And that's why we turned. I told Chucky to turn around. Let's go look. So we turned around, and Chucky pulled up by Barbara's place, my sister. And I got the flashlight at the flatbed, and I looked. And maybe when I took the flashlight and looked around, maybe they were in my house, where I didn't go in there.
I just want to make the point before I let it slip away that I feel like the point where Stephen is seeing these lights is the place where we've just spoken in the last prior episodes about that path between Cuss Road and Stephen's trailer. And that's really where this comes into play again, because if we go back and look at that map, we can see that would be, if they did see headlights near his trailer and then all of a sudden they disappear, is it possible that they used this route? And I'm just putting it out there. That's all. I just wanted to say it before it kind of slipped away.
If you're going to plant that blood, it had to be within 30 minutes. Otherwise, that blood's going to congeal and be totally useless. The scary thing is that if that was someone that has just taken the blood from the trailer, and now I'm only speculating here, that then fits in with the observation by Stephen saying, hey, look, I saw taillights near my property. And when I went back with Chuck, it was gone. And you're correct. There is a direct link between his trailer and Cuss Road. So if the RAV4 was somehow secreted somewhere around the deer camp, Cuss Road, only speculation, that's when you would have done it. You're going to take that blood, you would have had to have taken it very, very quickly. Maybe Kellie would like to comment.
Oh, yeah. That's 30 minutes is still being highly, what's the word? Highly, generous, because it depends on other factors. Of course, you have weather, temperature, all these other factors that can actually congeal your blood a lot quicker. So 30 minutes is, again, the key word is generous. You not only need to have access to the RAV to be able to, the blood to be able to use it, like Dr. Silkman said, you then have to have access to the RAV almost immediately. You have to have a plan put in place, and you need the skill and tools to do it. And I know people are like, oh, you could just take blood, but it's honestly not that simple. And to, to hydrate it in a sense that if it had already started to congeal a little bit and you were going to utilize it a little bit more, you can't just use water. Water breaks it down and washes it away. You need distilled water. So again, sometimes it needs to be a little bit warm, like just to liquefy it. So there's these little physics methods to it as well, that you've got to have some kind of knowledge. And I guess I'm full disclosure, and I know that I have mentioned it before, and this is not favorable to some people, and we can all believe what we want, but I'm straight up do not believe the blood came from the sink. I think it makes a good narrative in terms of trying to do connecting elements and factors to bring forth the idea of planting. But I will be very, very shocked if it ever gets over the burden, because there is so many variables that you have to mark off to get there. And I just don't see anywhere that you can even lift off. You can't, in my opinion, you can't even prove that anyone even knew he bled. I know that, Stephen claims that he went to the Barb residence and that Bobby was there and he asked them if they wanted to go Menards and they all saw him bleeding. But in some recent research, I absolutely find that bluff. I'm not sure if this is the right appropriate time to bring that forward. But yeah, certain little variables like that, and the timelines, they're just so all over the place. The only thing that I will say that I find interesting, and that's what AC Rookie brought forward, and I'm not sure if a lot of people were following it back then on Twitter, but it has got a little bit to do with Andy Colburn. We have obviously footage that shows Stephen and Chuck walking into Menards just after 7 o'clock. But then we have Andy Colburn, whether he was writing a report or whether he rang or he tapped into the dispatch after the fact, after 7 o'clock, saying he was still at the Avery salvage yard. Whether that kind of goes hand in hand. The only thing that I always thought that it could have always been a possibility that it was actually Andy Colburn is for the generalization that it would be just good work ethic if he had stuck around to investigate. And what I'm saying is that is maybe the lights was just Andy, because I think of it like that. We have Andy at the residence at front of Mars talking to Stephen. Stephen openly admits immediately that it was him that made the appointment, that she did indeed come. He was very forthcoming, gave the kind of everything he's always said. The timeline has always remained the same in that perspective. Told Andy that, and then took off and did what he had to do. Now, as a law enforcement officer, would you not expect Andy Colburn to then go, you know what, I'm going to drive down the road, I'm going to look around because I just spoke to Stephen, he has confirmed that she was here, I better just go and make sure that I don't see anything out of the ordinary. That is what a good and thorough police officer would do, right? Go around and check the area. You've just been confirmed that she was here. Why not look for signs that she had definitely confirmed, so you can go back and go, I went back, I looked in the area, I identified the car that she took the photo of, her vehicle was not around there, and then I left. So maybe he did stick around to have a little look around to see whether or not he could see anything out of the ordinary. So then later he can go, well, nah, it definitely wasn't there because I looked. It is strange that you would talk to Stephen and then just go, okay, thank you, bye-bye, and not look, when in all the other reports, they were looking. They looked around, they were at zippers, they were looking around, they sat at front of the car park, in the church thing, and then even Bradley checks. When they left Bradley checks, you see the report that they're driving around all the back streets looking around that area too. So I don't think it could be, it might not be the moment where the blood was taken from the sink, but it could be explained in terms of Andy Colburn was doing his routine check.
Yeah, he's going to walk a very thin line for what he might need a search warrant to check. So I think he can check stuff that's out in the open. For example, if he were to go up and knock on Stephen's door and go up and knock on Barb's door, anything that he sees, I think is probably okay. Although that's going to certainly get questioned hard by the defense during pretrial. But I guess I'm missing that the point is you're going to, what is he going to find again? He's going to find blood?
My point is, it could have been his lights. He was just driving around the area that Stephen had just said openly that she was there, and that he's just gone. That's the lights. The lights was, and then we have him on document record still being at the Avery salvage yard around that time. So that was my point. Was more that the lights could have been Andy, just going around having a little look in that area, whether or not he saw, like you said, he doesn't have a search warrant. He's very limited to what he can do, but he sure in hell can drive down to the area that Stephen would have said, my sister's residence, my residence, had a little drive around and went, yep, nope, her car's not here. That's it.
But
he's a thorough officer, constantly checking the plates, double checking his work, calling it in to dispatch, making sure.
But the only problem with that scenario is that Stephen and Chuck went back, right? And there's only one way in and one way out. So they never said that they saw Colburn or any other police officer down there. So if Colburn was still down there, and I agree, that's a sensible thing to do, I can't see Andrew Colburn driving across the cornfield and going out Cuss Road. So the question is, who was there? Who was there? Because Stephen said that before they actually exited Avery Road, they turned around, right? And it also proves another thing, that Stephen had line of sight to his trailer which meant what he said about the cornfield being cut down was 100% correct. So if he was able to see the tail lights near his trailer, he was able to see Teresa turn left on 147 because the cornfield was cut down. So the question is, was it one of the Dassey boys in a car? I don't know. But clearly he went back with Chuck and they looked around, they couldn't see anybody.
Yes, I mean in a planting scenario, you have to exclude, anybody on the property because they wouldn't need their car to go into Steven's trailer, right? So this has to be someone using that, exit. That's how I view it. And maybe it's non-nefarious. Maybe someone did do that, but this idea that Steven has didn't happen. It's hard to know for sure, but I kind of agree with you there, Dr. Silkman. Then where did this car go? If you saw lights and then you go back and see it, then where did it just disappear?
All right. Well, how about this for a possible scenario? Please don't jump on my head. Say Colburn was still there, or another detective or law enforcement, and they're suspicious as hell of Steven. They're going, shit, let me just check in the trailer. Oh my God, look at all this blood. Let me get some. Let's test it. Let's see whose blood it is. Is it Teresa's? But remember, at that stage, here's the problem. They never had an exemplar of her DNA, right? That might explain why Wiegert was trying to get all the samples for DNA testing later on in her house. Remember the hairbrush and other items? Because they never had an exemplar DNA standard for Teresa Hallbach. So they had to try and find one. But how about the scenario where they thought, I wonder if she really was in here. They see all this blood and they collect some. It's total speculation, but it's due cause, right? Because as Kellie said, you're doing your due diligence. You're looking around to see if there's any, anything nefarious. You bloody walk into the sink, the bathroom area, and oh my God, there's all this blood. But not only that, there's droplets of blood on the floor and on the door frame. Now, if you're a police officer and you're seeing all this blood, you're thinking to yourself, holy shit, maybe some blood was collected. I don't know. Only speculation, of course.
Well, we have a report. I know that I said that I don't think the blood came from the sink. That, in my perspective, is just the idea of it being like taken from an outside source, like a family member, and then planted. But it doesn't stop the fact that we have a report that they collected the blood from, I believe, Steven's trailer on the 5th. The irony of that is the blood isn't actually documented and found in the RAV until the morning of the 6th. So I know that everyone's like, and I get Kathleen's point. Her point is, yeah, but they're taking the blood from the bathroom. It's a bit of a high risk, and it is because they don't know whose blood it is. You're not going to frame, if you're going to frame Steven, you're not going to put drips of someone else's blood around it and it's not his. But then I think, but logically, you can look at it and physically see with your own eyes it is fresh. At this stage, Jody is in jail. Stephen Avery is the only one that's living there. And like we just see in that picture, he has an open cut on his hand showing on the 4th in an interview. Anyone could have seen that.
And Colburn denied it. Colburn denied seeing the wound.
Exactly. So there's all these factors. This is what I'm talking about, factors and timelines. These are all the variables that you have to factor in, and these all can line up to a narrative as well. So it's not as straightforward as someone came into his garage just to take it, because then you've got to, before you even get there, and this is what the state is saying, before you even get there, show us how. You haven't marked off how someone just was able to pull this off within, like Dr. Silkman said, you got 30 minutes generously to take the blood to be able to use it in a planting scenario, but you're not factoring in the time it takes to even construct an idea. Normal people don't walk around, see blood and go, oh, I'm going to take that and frame you, because that is meant to be the moment of point of Kathleen and Stephen's narrative, is the moment of a ding goes in Bobby Dassey's head that this is the moment the framing was going to happen. He saw a moment, he took it. That's what would have happened if Stephen Avery didn't even bleed that week. What was the framer going to do then? And I've said it before. The only people that could have got away with that is law enforcement, because theoretically you don't need an open cut to bleed. You could find Stephen's blood in that RAV and say Teresa punched him in the nose and his nose bled. That's where the blood came from. But you've got to have access to a blood source. So there's so many things that you kind of just go, where does it all make sense?
We turn around, let's go look. So we turned around, and Chucky pulled up by Barbara's place, my sister, and I got the flashlight on the flatbed, and I looked. And maybe when I took the flashlight and looked around, maybe they were in my house, where I didn't go in there. And I was just looking for a vehicle.
Do you know what time that was when you saw the tail lights Thursday night?
Probably between 6 and 7, somewhere in there. That's where I think where they got the blood. Because when I went with Jumpy to the Menards, when I come back, I didn't go to the bathroom. I peed outside, you know. Then I went to bed. And Friday morning, when I got up and took a shower, it was gone. I didn't notice it no more.
What was gone Friday morning? The blood was gone?
Yeah, it was all cleaned up.
Hello. Hi. Hi. How you doing?
All right, as long as I'm sitting down.
I know what you mean. Do you feel bad? Like
I hurt. My legs hurt me. I can't walk hardly.
really? So you've gotten worse since I was
Yeah.
here last.
Yeah,
Have you talked to Stephen?
today I did.
Yeah. So he and I went through this last week. The order's going in to turn the stuff over to me for the
Oh, yeah.
testing. Yeah.
Good.
We did it by agreement because when you start litigating testing, it could take us 5 years. So
Yeah.
we seem to
No, I
work
won't
it
be
out.
around here in 5 years, I don't
No.
think.
No, I don't want to be. Don't want to be working on this in 5 years. I just got a screwdriver. There.
Oh, you brought your own tools?
Yeah, I'm a full service law firm. Yeah, so I want to go up to the trailer. I'm going to try to take the sink out if I can. And you have the key?
I got a
Okay.
key here too, though. Chucky brought it here.
Yeah, I could get it. So
Oh,
you-
it's behind the paper plates on the counter.
okay. So I'm going to go up there and then I'll come back by before I leave. I'll just tell you what I find.
Yeah, okay then.
Okay.
Any comments on how the verbal agreement worked out with the Emperor Palpatine?
I'm with you on that, Big Jeff. I'd like to know more.
Yeah, not very well. She gets certain things. I'm just wondering if the testing of the RAV was part of this agreement, the one that judging what happens. I guess I don't want to spoil it, but it's not in the documentary. Judge Angie makes a surprise ruling, right? And she orders testing stopped.
Yeah, basically, the state didn't want to hand over item A, right? And item A
Right.
is the RAV4, the most
I don't.
important.
Yeah, I just don't remember whether or not, or know whether or not the testing that she's talking about right now, where she said she's making a verbal agreement rather than litigating, included item A, or whether there's other agreements that are coming. But bad idea, bad.
Well, and I was going to let it go, but Big Jeff does kind of harken back to the gentleman's agreement that was done in the trial, and I think there was a little bit of funny business going on at that point too.
Yeah, I mean, in the so-called gentleman's agreement, that's how we ended up with the Veely CD. One of the ways, right? I mean, it's got the nature of the gentleman's agreement was in order to save money, the state won't object, or we agree that foundation will have been established because we have this and that. And really, there is notional foundation, if you will, legally for such an agreement, as long as both sides are securely founded in ethics. But there Kratz pulled some shenanigans, for I think the Veely CD is that he obviated the need for Detective Veely to even testify at all as part of the gentleman's agreement. I think Jack on this than me, but I don't remember if there was any other ones, any other shenanigans there besides the Veely CD that went on with regard to the gentleman's agreement that allowed them to sort of not have to establish legal foundation or establish how certain evidence was collected or / processed.
The pap smear, Teresa Hobach's pap smear.
Right.
Yep, they didn't want to bring the person from the laboratory or the hospital on the stand, so they came up with the stipulation of, okay, we just accept this is Teresa Hobach's pap smear and that's it. And also with the Veely CD, like you're saying, Big Jeff, they didn't want to get Veely on the stand. Now imagine if they got Veely on the stand, right, Jack 61? It would have been a different outcome, in my opinion. Back then.
Absolutely. Yeah, they didn't want his ass up there at all.
He said that he saw pry marks on the door. Let me go talk to him. Hey, Kurt.
Yes.
You know, this thing looks like it's got a pry mark on it. With
that door?
Yeah. See on here?
Yeah.
It's crazy though that they would come to the front. Probably somebody who's done it a bunch of times. Because I think cops, they would have that because they find cars all the time.
Yeah.
And they get into them.
Like a Slim Jim.
Yeah. That's the official name for it.
But if she could be talking about the same kind of pry bar that Colburn used to open up the trunks of all the cars on the Avery salvage yacht, in just an act of just basic vandalism to the business. It's probably out of scope here, but going around and basically, the junkyard's livelihood, right, is different pieces and parts. It basically ruined every single trunk on the salvage yard by taking a pry bar, one similar to which I could have made those marks and done that. I think that's what Kathleen's talking about here, not a Slim Jim. Slim Jim is not that. It's not
right.
Wouldn't have made those marks.
Right. By doing that, it basically vandalized their whole entire inventory, because a lot of car restorers, they want hoods and bonnets. You've now given that person, the restorer, an extra lot of work getting out all the dings and dents. So yeah, there was no need to do any of that, popping the hoods and the bonnets. And it makes you question, what were they really looking for? Was it contraband? Was it some drugs? Was it who knows what? But there was no need to open up those vehicles, especially since they had cadaver dogs and scent dogs. Simply ridiculous.
And keys. They got to ask Chuck Earl for the keys.
Correct. Yeah, correct. 100% correct.
Here it is. we just have to disconnect it. I have to have, we gotta have that surface.
Yeah.
Okay. At least you popped it out.
Well, we'll see. The wire's gonna be connected still. I just want the wrench to actually take the pipe out.
Not sure why Kathleen Zellner thought that a screwdriver would be sufficient. Because they make these things called pipe wrenches that you usually need to take a sink out. She may be the great conviction lawyer, but not the great plumber.
Well, you do bring up a great point. And, we're on a podcast right now, so we are kind of talking to each other a little differently than we normally might if the camera wasn't rolling. And I feel like that does need to be said sometimes, that not playing up to the camera, but just knowing that there's a camera present kind of changes the way that you might talk to one another. And I think, not the best choice in tools. I think there's going to be a couple more tools, but she does have that assistant that does seem to know how to get a sink out.
And also, I think she was having a dig at the investigators with the forensic analysis, because quite clearly the state never took out the sink and just checked out, what was going on here. So I think she was having a dig by saying, hey, all you need is a screwdriver. Come on, guys.
If the state took the sink out, Kel, if they would have used a backhoe, it would have been destroyed.
More for the fact that on a forensic level, so when people commit crimes, they have to wash up, correct? So you would think that they would have tested the sink to look for actually Teresa Hallbuck's DNA, because if there's meant to be this stabbing and this brutality of, in Brendan Dassey's story of the method of how she was injured, there would have been blood. So the boys would have had to have rinsed off. So you actually see in a lot of crimes when there's blood exposure that they do take sinks, and they even look at the bathtubs to see whether or not there is any residue of a DNA source that was trapped in any of the piping from the victims, that when you're rinsing off, cleaning up the crime, it could have been deposited then.
100% correct. And there was another case in the US, I can't remember the exact date, in which a person was dismembered, and they actually got rid of the body parts down the bathroom sink, the bathroom and the sinks, and the investigators drained and took apart the sinks and the drains, and guess what? They found minuscule evidence of tissue and tiny little bones. So the mere factor that they didn't check, I know that they checked the septic tanks, but they never checked my understanding is they never checked the plumbing in the bathroom and the sink and the shower and places like that, which, when you think about it, that would have been an obvious place to check, right? And they never did.
Is it moving?
Yeah,
good.
Should be pretty soon.
All right. Voila. Do you remember his finger being cut?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know it was like really breaking open.
It bled in that sink.
Oh yeah, somebody cleaned it.
Do you remember him saying that? Someone had cleaned it?
He said something about it.
Yeah, because he kept trying to tell his trial attorneys that they took the blood out of the sink, but nobody was listening to him. Yeah, so I think that's the way it happened. So all that got done on the 3rd.
Well,
would there be any reason that Stephen would have a pry bar? Because it looks like a pry bar was used to open up his trailer.
Quick corroboration to what Dolores says, for those of us who've powered through the jail calls, and you don't have to go too far. Stephen does, within a few days of his arrest, have a call with Dolores where he's kind of saying, well, I racked my brains as to what possibly have done. And that's when he sort of remembers, during his time in, first few days in jail. And he airs that theory to Dolores. Right in the jail call, within the first 20 or 30 of them. And he makes a lot of them, just in case he sometimes calls her 3 or 4 times a day. So I think probably within the first 20 calls, so within the first week, he's like, oh yeah, I've been That's all I can do is think of how this might have happened, and the only thing I can think of is I remember the blood in the sink. I remember it not being there one day. So it has been that sort of documented as soon as that. So when Kathleen asked her, she's not lying when she said he said something about it, and it's sort of enshrined in the jail calls.
But there's one obvious thing that we forgot to mention. Who do we absolutely knows that Stephen Avery bled? No question about it. Absolutely knew that Stephen bled.
Chuck Avery.
Yep, Chuck Avery.
Those phone calls early on from Stephen where he's racking his brain. He's like, well, I bled in the sink, my bloody finger. But I don't know at the top of my head. And the reason why I'm only bringing it up is because I'm bringing Imbalanced to this, because there is always that other side of this case that people, the guilters, bring up. They hang on to a phone call, and one of you guys might know it better than I do. I know I've heard it. I know what the whole premises of what they're talking about, but I'm not confident in relaying it back now without re-listening to it. But I do know that they hold on to it because he's apparently having another early conversation with someone. I believe it's a gentleman. And they say something about, but the blood in the sink, it didn't get taken from that. Now, the guilters say that he admits to that there was no blood taken, that it didn't look like it had been cleaned up. Does anyone remember that? Like the entirety of the cleaningness of what was actually said, without me having to quickly go back and listen to it now. Does anyone remember that whole argument that he also, on another breath, said that the sink didn't look like it had been cleaned?
No, I don't. But there's a lot of calls.
I'm not recalling. I'm not recalling that, Kel. But like Jeff said, there's a lot of calls.
What I'll do is I'll have a look in the background as we kind of go through, and if I find it or find something of it, I'll bring it up in the closing arguments. Oh my God, the closing statements, and we'll address it again then.
Well, I think today it's going to be called the closing arguments, just for future reference. But go ahead if you had a comment there, Big Jeff.
I like that. That's a great moniker for us.
Yeah.
Brenda's getting released?
Is he today?
I don't know. You want?
Yeah.
Here, talk to her.
Okay. Yeah, because maybe the judge.
It just came on my that Judge
Doesn't. Are they gonna do it today?
As soon as they get an address of where he's gonna be citing splitting, I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, but yeah, it just hit.
And are they going to release him from where he is incarcerated right now? Or are they going to move him and then release him, or can you tell?
I didn't fully read the brief yet.
Okay. I'll pull it up online. Thank you. That's great news.
Oh yeah.
What? It sounded like she was going to cry to me on the phone.
Who?
Maybe it was going to be a happy cry.
So I just saw the court order. They're going to let Brendan out. He should get out today. They're just getting the probation officer approved.
I bet Barbara's crying if she hears it already.
Does she know?
Well, I don't know.
Can you hear the excitement in Mom Avery's, Dolores's voice there? And Brad Schimmel has like 17 heart attacks getting this stopped, emergency meetings, emergency motions, and everything he could do to throw a roadblock into at least letting Brendan out. I know we've had this discussion. I'm sure we'll have it again, letting Brendan out on, bond or whatever, as long as he had, even if it was home confinement or whatever. He had and then of course he brought the hall box into it as well.
And as we said in the previous episodes, habeas corpus petition, which is what this was under, leans towards the innocence of the accused. And therefore, by that fact of law, they should have let Brendan out. He should have been released, even if it was just for the bond until the next court date.
That's right. I agree. They should have, and even I mean, it would have been hard, and if it went still the same way that it went, it would have been difficult. But at least he would have been out for a few months, and you just never know what can happen in those few months if somebody's out. It can change everything. So
Do you have a phone number?
I think her phone stays in the car. She can't take it in there.
Oh,
Yeah,
Well, when was
That's
she
it.
supposed to
they're
get
pretty
off of
strict
work?
there.
When was she supposed to get off of work?
3.
Because if he can get out today, someone has to pick him up, right?
yeah, they do. Somebody probably wants to start driving because it's going to take them a while to get there.
And she
Yeah,
should be
that's
the
about
one.
a
She
3-hour
should be the
drive for
one.
her.
Well, we had to figure out where she works. Don't you think?
By that
Somebody
one
ought to
on
go tell her.
Columbus Street.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to ride over there and tell her? She'll be crazy.
even then, Dolores was struggling to get around.
It's just freaking horrific because we know the end. We know the end here. It's just horrific.
Yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. It's, she's saying we need someone to start driving in the car because this could happen at any moment. You can feel like how this anticipation was just building in there.
Flowers. Yes. So Columbia Correctional Center. I'm working off what they do in most places, but you never know. Maybe they couldn't talk to her. I don't know.
Her boss is talking to Brendan's lawyer right now.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like Night Rider is talking to Barb's boss.
I don't know what time it is now. 2 o'clock.
It's 2 o'clock. She said she'd lose her job. She walked out.
I just got home from work and Brendan was supposed to be getting released, but that's all I know. I don't know when. I don't know how. I don't know nothing. So fill us in, Ma.
Fill you in with what? All I know is he's coming home. It's the greatest feeling ever.
Did they say what day?
No,
Is it going to be this week?
don't know. She's calling me back later.
#27 News has been here at Columbia Correctional all day waiting on Dassey's release, but we have learned that the U.S. Probation Office in Milwaukee, which will supervise Dassey's release, has to visit the home where he plans to be living first before he can be released. Meanwhile, Wisconsin Attorney General Brad Schimmel said he plans to file an emergency motion to stop Dassey's release.
No table. Yeah, usually by 25-2, he'll call.
Yeah, it's getting close.
There
he is.
Sit.
Collect call from an inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution. To accept charges, press 1. To reduce charge, thank you for using entry link. You may start the conversation now.
Hello, honey.
Hello?
You hear the good news?
Did you?
Yes.
Yeah, but I didn't get to see it.
You didn't get to see it. Why is that?
Because they bought me out for the showers at the same time as that news was on.
Oh, really?
Hey, buddy, can you do us a favor and talk louder?
Yeah. Yeah, but when are they gonna release me though?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, I thought it was gonna be tonight. Like I'm even wearing my own personal underwear right now.
Really?
Yeah, very bad.
Are you planning on getting out?
Yeah. Maybe put my sweatpants on.
You were really ready to go, weren't you?
So I might be out by Friday probably.
So we're hoping. Are you excited?
Yeah.
Yeah. So am I. I'll be more excited when you're here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I know you're out.
Yeah, you'll be more excited once I'm in your arms.
Yep.
It's probably going to be just me and your mother.
Well, I think they would bring my stuff to you guys first before they release me. Because when Steven was coming out, he had mom's hand in one hand and the other one in
Jenny's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if he even brung anything with him. I think he left everything there. I don't know. I don't remember.
I thought he brought his typewriter with him, didn't he?
Oh, God. I don't know. That's been too long ago.
Yeah.
So is there a different way in there besides the front door?
But the Sally port's just right in the front, so I don't think there is.
We're just trying to figure out a way to get you out there safely, that's all.
Yeah.
Without any news media?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really frustrated. The media is making him out as kind of a rock star and a victim, when the real victim is Teresa Halbach.
I mean, come on now, he's not a rock star, he's a killer. They did what they did, and I think he should never get out. And I had to pull over and call you because it's just upsetting.
If there's some legal issue, okay, fine, but these guys did it.
I was going to try and stop you breaking your iPad, Jack 61, but it got just a couple of points here. Look, Making a Murderer, the directors and the producers, they were balanced in their presentation, right? They could have chosen not to have shown any of this, but they did, right? They gave the impressions of the general population and what people were thinking at the time. And this is exactly what Brad Schimmel was after. That type of response, that type of disgust, anguish, angst, and to call Brendan Dassey a rock star. For God's sake, did you hear the kid's voice? He's level-headed. He's not even excited. And now you've got the media portrayal who's judging him all over again.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't agree with those callers. Those callers are dead wrong. But Brendan's conviction was vacated due to the fact that his confession was inadmissible. So at this point in time, it's as if that trial never happened. So to say that they both did it, well, he's not been convicted anymore based on the judge's ruling that confession was inadmissible.
Big Jeff and panel, what I wish, because Brad Schimmel was quick to do it, and he used the media to his advantage, but Duffin didn't. But what I wish was that Duffin would have done a televised press conference and went through his 91-page brief and explained himself succinctly, and because now would the media have covered it? Absolutely, they would have. They might have given people a bigger impression, they would definitely have given them more information than what they ever got during the trial and the lead up to the trial. I think that it's really imbalanced in the minds of the public of reality and then what the state wanted to present. There's no way they wanted Brendan out, even for a second.
with the talk radio where someone says, what does he think, he's a rock star? And then the next guy calls in and says, he's no rock star. And they just kind of build off of each other and create an echo chamber. And I feel like we witnessed a little bit of that right there. And this guy was so upset that he had to pull over and call in. That's how upset he was. Well, did he read the brief that Judge Duffin said? Because I feel like I'm just as upset as he was that Brendan was even in this situation to begin with. So, the power of media, I guess. We did see a lot in this episode, Big Jeff. I think it's time to move on over to the wrap-up for you. We did see a lot that happened. So why don't you lead us into is it closing arguments today?
Yes, the closing arguments. Well, it's just one more comment, before my closing on the callers. It's a very common argument strategy, technique when you have no argument, to first create a distortion and then attack that distortion. Brendan never said he was a rock star. Laura Nyrider never said he was a rock star. Kathleen Zellner never said he was a rock star. So, to all of a sudden assert that he declared himself a rock star in one way or another, and then attack him for being a rock star is a perfect example of that argument of creating a distortion and then attacking the distortion. And the guilters do that a lot. So that's a good thing to keep in your hip pocket. Look out for that distortion that they create to only attack subsequently. But as for my closing arguments, who would have thought that they could have thrown a plot twist into a documentary like this? Kathleen Zellner goes to the Avery salvage yard to pick up the sink, and whoa, look out, Brendan's getting released. I thought that was an interesting left turn kind of plot twist. But we see in this episode Kathleen continuing to do her job. She's racking her brains to figure out how the blood could have got in the RAV. I personally, Kelly, I personally don't believe that she believes in the sink theory. I just don't. But I think that's the one she's kind of stuck with for lack of a better because I think that's what's in the pro se, so she kind of has to stick with it. But irrespective of that, she's doing her job. She's doing her due diligence. I like to see it. I really enjoy seeing her, attempting to follow the evidence and dismantle the state's arguments. And that's, to me, what the beginning was about. And, we'll see if I can actually, even stomach thinking about what happened to Brendan in this episode. I'm so upset about it. I can't even discuss it. Let's handle that. On to the next for me.
All right. Well, don't smash another iPad. Jack, we saw a lot in this episode. Give us your closing arguments for today.
Well, I've tended to latch on here to this last bit that we saw as expected because it concerns Brendan. And I have to agree 100% with what Big Jeff's talking about there. Create the noise, then attack it. And this is a tactic that, as he said, we've seen guilters use time and again, and even actually some of them are to this very day do the same thing, and also they love to discount certain things and certain events, but not reading through, not being fair and unbiased from their standpoint, and did they read Duffin's brief in his reply to set Brendan free, or give the state a chance to retry him or whatever they were going to do. I doubt it. Maybe they did. I don't know. But to get on and to just trash him in his media broadcast, to me, it's just terrible, especially if they haven't done their homework. So it's really upsetting, and I know we're going to hear our next venture out, our next episode. We're going to get deeper into this, and my iPad is thankfully set away from me. I didn't recall that we were coming up on this, but I'm glad I'll set it to the side for now. So with that said, I'm going to leave it there. I'm irritated with what I heard in that radio broadcast. The media, man, it absolutely drove so much of these cases. It's undeniable it did, and I know that it colored the public. With that, Yep. On to Cal or Dr. Silkman that want to carry on with this, because I'm irritated, man.
Okay, thank you, Jack. Yeah, I feel your pain, man. I'm right there with you on that. Dr. Silkman, share with us your wrap up comments or your closing arguments today.
I like that one. I really enjoyed the episode so far. First of all, I really enjoyed the panel's discussion. I really like it when we examine the forensic evidence and try and rack our brains and try and work out what the hell happened. I like Kathleen Zorner's scientific approach. I like the way she's doing things. Look, not everyone's going to have all the answers. We know that. There are tough questions that we must face. And you're correct, Big Jeff and Jack61. It's a straw man argument. And Ken Kratz was a master at this during the trial. And the classic one was, saying that Strang and Buting were implying that the Lincoln Colburn had murdered Teresa Halbach. Law enforcement had murdered Teresa Halbach, and then pointing a finger at Strang and Buting. And of course, they never said that. And guilters love the straw man argument, creating a scenario which doesn't exist and then arguing for something you never said. But I was very, very taken aback by the veracity of Brad Schimmel, the mere fact that there was hope for the family, Brendan's family, but you knew that the rug was going to be pulled right under him. And it's a terrible, terrible thing. But it also demonstrated how divided the Avery family was. The mere fact that they couldn't even celebrate the good news, right? It was sort of like they were all in a state of disbelief. And the oncoming episodes are going to get harder and harder. But I'd like to thank all my panel members. That was fantastic discussion today. And everyone in chat, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Silkman. It makes me think of the Wizard of Oz. If I only had a brain, the straw man. Kellie, if you wouldn't lead us out of this episode 19, give us your closing arguments and then lead us out.
Well, my closing argument is based on the keywords perception and interpretation. I should have known better. So while I mentioned it earlier in the podcast as we went along in terms of trying to find the balance and bringing forth phone calls, and again, no one shies away from the fact that Stephen Avery very early brings up the sink theory, being the fact that blood was there and blood could have been taken from there. The only reason why I, try to bring forth the other claims is because it's been in the community that there is other phone calls that he also discusses it. So I did. I found what the guilters claim is their straw man argument, as you would say it. And I think it's purely down to interpretation. While we have listened to all the other phone calls and it's very straightforward that he's always claimed that he bled, he dripped into the sink. This is what they hang on to. I can always send the link to Jeff Jones and he can add it to the in the chat or whatever, so anyone can listen to it for themselves. But it has it starts at the 2:55 mark. Someone had already in the has transcribed it, and it is, they can't, for starters, disclosure, I can't even get it out now, disclaimer, they don't even know whether it's Chuck or Pa he's talking to, but this is what it says. How did they get your blood, Stephen? I don't know. Well, if the trailer's open, they could have got it in there. Chuck, Pa. Yeah, but there wouldn't be no blood in the trailer. Stephen. Well, no. But I got all those cuts too and sores. There could be something in the sink. And then that's how they end it. But then they say, what? No mention of blood stealing. No mention of noticing that blood was gone. How? Why? Who says, well, no, after cutting your hand and noticing that someone cleaned it up after you didn't clean it up? So again, it doesn't prove anything more than just, again, what people interpret in certain phone calls. yeah, as for the actual episode that were part of this episode, I agree. When I watched it, it feels like there was a divide in the family. Like you saw that moment. If you go back and rewatch it, Barb gives Scott a look and they give it a smile and she looks down. It's almost like they want to be overwhelmed with joy, but they don't want to show it. I don't know whether it's because they're trying to respect other family members by not rubbing in their face that we still have one out, we've still got one more to go. Or when she's sitting at that table, Barb, I almost felt like this sense of uncertainty, like doubt, like in the back of her mind. I think she's like, she says that I won't get more excited until I have you in my arms. It's like she always knew at the back of her mind that there's something that could still go wrong. And you can actually feel it when you watch her body language, and you just get the sense of that atmosphere at that moment where she wants to believe that it's finally going to happen, but in the back of her mind, she just knows this isn't over just yet. And knowing what we're coming back up to, this roller coaster with Brendan's always hard. And again, where we're at here in 2023, let's just keep continuing that. This is the year for the boys. Thank you, panel. Thank you, everyone in chat. And we'll see you next time.
Oh, thank you, Kel. I don't think I could have said it any better. I just want to say thank you to Big Jeff and Jack and Kelly, Dr. Silkman, because out of everybody here, I think I learned more than I contribute. And I just want to say how great it's been so far. We're starting a new year, 2023. Just want to give a shout out to the entire panel for making it to where we are. And we're all from a different part of the world and different time zones, and making this happen as frequently as we do is almost a miracle in itself, guys. So really appreciate that. So for Dr. Silkman and Kelly and Jack and Big Jeff, this is Jeff Jones saying this has been Discussing a Murderer.